Alex, I'll be blunt, could you quit the company?
Suddenly asked to resign by Bob. I was taken aback.
What?
To be clear, you're just an eyesore. If you don't quit, I might just have to end the business dealings with my dad's company. How about that?
That's because of your mistake, Bob.
At my comment, Bob's face turned grim and he started yelling threateningly.
Shut up, I didn't make any mistakes. It's all your fault. If you don't quit soon, I'll have my dad fire you.
Bob was hired just because he was the son of a client company's president. He had always been a source of frustration with his selfish behavior, but this incident was especially a headache. After much consideration, I decided it wasn't wise to oppose Bob and resolved to quit right there and then. When I got home, I confessed to my wife, Dorothy, that I was quitting my job, hanging my head in shame at my own helplessness. I'm sorry, I got fired today. Expecting a scolding, I timidly looked up at my wife's face, but to my surprise, she smiled broadly and embraced me comfortingly. That's great. Thank you for quitting. Surprised by her unexpected words, I tilted my head in confusion. My name is Alex. I am a 28-year-old employee at a construction company. My father is a well-known architect who has worked on everything from station buildings and government offices to custom homes. Growing up watching my father, I've always had a strong admiration for architecture and aspired to do the same type of work. Ever since I was little, I loved seeing the buildings my father worked on, and would spend hours poring over the many architecture books, blueprints, and photo albums at his office, dreaming of the day I could do similar work. My father was pleased with my interest and often took me to art museums on weekends to teach me about architectural styles in a playful way. I chose a high school with an architectural program and went on to attend one of the most prestigious architecture schools in the US, where I graduated successfully. During my student years, whenever I had time, I'd visit cafes, commercial facilities, and museums to study their structures and materials, compiling reports that made my peers call me an architecture nerd, but I enjoyed those times immensely. Over those 6 years from high school to college graduation, I amassed a vast collection of reports that still occupy a cherished place on my bookshelf. After graduating from university, I joined a local small construction company, where I work to this day. I chose a smaller construction company over a major one because I believed it would allow me to visit various construction sites and engage in a variety of tasks. This plan worked out well, and now I handle multiple construction projects, juggling several sites each day. Though I thought I had made a strong foundation of architectural knowledge during my studies, practical experience is something I am still gaining. It's been 6 years since I joined the company, but there's still so much to learn from the experienced colleagues on site. I have been consistently studying architecture alongside my job. Someday, I want to create a building that I have designed myself. That's what keeps me chasing this dream. I may be a dull architecture nerd, but I have someone who supports me through it all. My wife, Dorothy. Dorothy was a classmate from high school, beautiful and cheerful, and the most popular girl in the class. Of course, like many others, I was one of the many who admired her, but my determination set me apart. Right after meeting her at the start of high school, I mustered all my courage and confessed my feelings. Dorothy, I like you. Will you go out with me? She was surprised, with her face turning red, but she accepted my confession.
Really? We haven't known each other long, Alex, but why me?
It's hard to explain why, but before I knew it, I had fallen hopelessly in love with you. Dorothy, you're kind to everyone and always so cheerful. Thank you. Please, will you go out with me? I don't think many people have fallen for me as hard as you have, if I'm good enough for you. I'll never forget Dorothy's bashful smile in that moment. Even after we started dating, I was determined not to let any other guy have her. We walked to and from school together as much as possible, And even when we were in different classes, I'd find time during breaks to see her, continually showering her with affection. My friend joked about my actions, saying, "Stop being her stalker," but I was that desperate to keep Dorothy close. Also, the vast amount of reports I managed to compile during my student years was thanks to Dorothy's kindness, as she patiently accompanied me on architectural site visits, which I called dates. Dorothy didn't go to college, but said she had something she wanted to do, and started working. We continued our relationship through my university years, and 3 years ago, we happily got married. Now, she wakes up early every morning to prepare delicious, nutritious lunches for me as I work on construction sites. Dorothy is an excellent cook, practically professional. My colleagues are envious of the lovingly prepared lunches she makes, and I proudly eat them every day at noon. Once or twice a month, I forget my precious lunch, and she brings it to the site for me. One day, as I was enjoying both a happy home life and a successful career, the son of the president of a major construction company joined our company. Bob, 25 years old, was hired due to strong recommendation by President Taylor, his father and president of a client company. Bob had just become a licensed architect and needed to accumulate practical experience. With the title of a young certified architect, everyone at the company welcomed him warmly. "This is Bob, who will be joining the design department from today. Everyone, please take good care of him." "Hello, I'm Bob. I look forward to working with you starting today." Saying that, Bob gave a casual greeting. At first, he seemed humble, but once the new employee training started, his true nature gradually became apparent. As I was a somewhat close in age, I was assigned to be his trainer, but guiding him proved to be more challenging than expected. One day, I had asked Bob to prepare some design documents for a construction site, but after discovering several calculation errors, I approached him about it. "Bob, can we talk?" "Yes, what is it?" "I was looking at the documents you prepared yesterday, and there are some mistakes in the numbers here." "Is that so?" "Yes, so I need you to correct them." "Why do I have to do that? Couldn't you just fix them when you noticed? Or are you trying to harass me?" He would listen quietly when taught, but when corrected or pointed out, he became emotional and argumentative, which was troublesome. "No, that's wrong. It's good for you to know what you got wrong to prevent the same mistakes in the future." I don't need that kind of thing. You know I'm the boss's son, right? Minor chores like that are for the lower ranks to handle, not me." I was frustrated by Bob's dismissive attitude and the way he scoffed at my advice. It turned out that Bob, he never missed an opportunity to remind everyone he was the son of a client CEO, was an incredibly troublesome person. Despite this, my colleagues and I tried to be considerate and teach him about the job, but Bob's behavior worsened day by day, making increasingly negative remarks that soured the atmosphere. "Bob, about the on-site training coming up." What's this about going to a site? No way. Why do I have to go there?" "Why? Because you need to learn the practical aspects of the field work as part of the training." "I don't need to. After all, I'm a future president. Besides, if you keep nagging, I might just tell my dad and get you fired. How about that?" "Fired? But on-site training is really important."
You're so persistent. Are you sure you want me to complain to my dad?
That's
Field work is something you guys do, right? I'm saying it's not my job.
I can count how many times I nearly lost my patience with Bob. He despises field work and looks down on and mocks his colleagues and senior employees. However, because he was the son of a major client, everyone treated him like a hot potato, holding back what they really wanted to say, creating a stifling atmosphere in the company. Amid the unsettling atmosphere created by Bob's behavior, the company decided to establish a project team for a particular construction venture. The job involved a major project, constructing a commercial building as part of the redevelopment of the area in front of the station. We would demolish the old building and construct a new one with 3 underground floors and 15 above ground. To facilitate access from the underground passages, extensive underground construction would also be necessary. While I was fully committed to the project team, the atmosphere turned gloomy when Bob, as requested by the president, was also included in the team. Right from the start, Bob was eager about this major project, declaring he would lead the design process. "I will handle the design, so please manage the other miscellaneous tasks among yourselves." Isn't it tough to handle the design alone? It's a breeze for me. I'm a certified architect. Oh, and let me make it clear from the start, no interference needed. Make sure you all understand that. But this is a major building design, you know. Enough, you're being annoying. If I need help, I'll ask for it, so until then, just do your own work quietly. Incredibly, he started insisting on handling the design of such a large building construction by himself. While a renowned architect had set the basic design following the building owner's preferences, and foundational blueprints were available, managing the layout and all design aspects alone was an exceedingly difficult task. Still concerned, I persisted. "The workload is going to be immense, Bob. I'm just worried about you." "I don't need that kind of concern. It's none of your business." Initially, Bob was enthusiastic about meeting with the client's company, but as days passed, he started turning pale. The building was to have a streamlined design with many custom requests from the client, such as a bold atrium with a domed ceiling at the entrance. To meet these demands, a design combining various materials was necessary, and moreover, it had to be equipped with detailed earthquake resistance measures, including base isolation and damping systems. The structural calculations required had reached a level of utmost complexity. Bob was cornered and spent all day at his desk, clutching his head, seemingly at his wits' end. However, because he had so adamantly insisted on working alone, others hesitated to offer help. Then came the day to present the finalized design plans to the building owner. Worried about any flaws in Bob's documents, I approached him. "Bob, has anyone done a final check on the design plans?" "What? Are you trying to find fault with my design?" "It's not about finding fault, but shouldn't there be a check?" "No need, just listen to my presentation. Have you managed the construction schedule and material procurement properly?" "Of course." Bob disregarded my advice and even insinuated that I and other project members weren't doing our jobs. Without Bob sharing his design plans internally, it was impossible to ensure detailed scheduling and material procurement. How could he not realize this? Project members foresaw the need for significant revisions after today's presentation, and scheduled critical meetings with associated firms for later. Bob's selfish actions were causing trouble in many ways. Frustrated, I swallowed my words, unable to confront him. Representatives from the client's company, including President Johnson, were present. Our side included project members, the sales director Steve, and the executive managing director Paul. As the distinguished members gathered, Bob began his presentation with enthusiasm. "Thank you for gathering today. This building incorporates the latest technology, enabling a streamlined facade. We've used double-glazed windows to ensure design aesthetics while enhancing thermal insulation and energy efficiency." "That's amazing. It's exciting to think about this building being constructed." "I'm honored by your praise. Now, please look at the next document. Regarding the interior, we've realized your request for 5-story atrium with a domed ceiling by using large frames and beams for support. Here is..." Bob's presentation impressed a client and other project members. However, I was the only one who paled upon reviewing Bob's design and documents. "Wait, these calculations are all wrong. This won't support the space for a 5-story atrium. Major revisions are needed." That concludes my presentation. Any questions? Realizing this was my only chance, I raised my hand. "What? Alex, what is it?" Bob asked, frowning suspiciously. Bob, about the structural calculations in the document you just explained for the interior. Yes, what about it? This calculation won't support the structural integrity for the atrium. It needs to be recalculated, and possibly some design changes are necessary. I apologized to the astonished client, whose eyes widened in surprise. This kind of mistake should have been checked internally. It's like airing our dirty laundry. I'm terribly sorry for this great inconvenience. Our internal checks were not sufficient. No worries, there's still plenty of time in the schedule. By the way, how much modification will be needed now? The beam is not strong enough given its current size, so we'll need a thicker one. This might slightly alter the dome's shape into an oval, or inevitably change its height. What are you talking about? Bob, sorry, just listen for a moment. I went over to Bob and explained the calculation errors in a low voice while pointing at the blueprint. Upon understanding the mistake, Bob's face turned red and he fell silent. I'm very sorry, but I will come back another day to explain the modifications. I'll rework the structural calculations to ensure minimal impact on the proposed design. Also, if you have any comments on the exterior or interior, I'd love to hear them. My explanation managed to smooth things over for the moment. Additionally, as if seizing the opportunity, I received plenty of new requests, which meant significant revisions were in order. After the meeting, the project team members were called in by Paul and Steve and got reprimanded. For the company, it was a major project, and it was unacceptable for errors to be revealed during the final presentation to the client. Bob was also there, maintaining a nonchalant demeanor, but as soon as we left the boardroom, he completely changed. Alex, what have you done? Huh? Don't make me look foolish in front of everyone. Are you harassing me? Are you jealous of me? There is no jealousy. That's why I asked if the preliminary checks were necessary. Shut up. If you were so concerned, you should have spoken up more. I was astounded by Bob's selfishness. I did mention it several times. You were the one who said it wasn't necessary. Luckily, we still have some leeway before construction starts. That's not the point. You always act so high and mighty. It's annoying. Well, there's nothing I can do about that. This is so annoying. You should just quit the company. Excuse me. I was momentarily stunned by the excessively unreasonable demand. As long as you're in this company, I'll suspend the dealings with my father's company. It's going to be trouble for the company because of you. That's harsh. You owe this company for hiring someone mediocre like you. Are you going to repay them like this? Isn't that a bit too tyrannical? You gonna say that? Think carefully about your next move. I'm not feeling well today, so I'm going home. Take care of the revisions. And don't bother coming in tomorrow unless you're ready to resign. Or else I really will stop the dealings. With that, Bob vented his anger and went home. I was completely exhausted. Afterward, while focusing on the revision work, I received concerned glances from my colleagues. If I stay here, Bob might actually end up stopping the dealings, and our small construction firm would be in jeopardy. I decided to quit my job after much deliberation in the back of my mind while I was deeply engrossed in revision work. The revision work was immense, but somehow I managed to complete it overnight. Then, early in the morning, I submitted my resignation to my boss, Bill. Bill, who had always treated me kindly, was shocked and concerned, but after I explained the situation, he supported my decision. Then, I said goodbye to the members of the project group, informing them that I was leaving the company. I'm resigning effective today. I'm sorry I won't be able to see the building completed. That's such a shame. Please let Bob know I've resigned. That was just a tantrum, wasn't it? There's no need to take it seriously and resign. Did you hear that? It was loud enough for the entire floor to hear. The executives might have had their ears plugged. They can't say anything to Bob. I see, but what if his dad really stops the business dealings with us? That's a concern for sure. Yeah, that's why I have to do this. Thanks for everything. I packed my meager belongings into a box, dragged my tired body out of the office, and headed home. Then, carrying a cardboard box, I returned home and told Dorothy that I had resigned. I thought she would be angry about my quitting my job on my own, but I was worried. Alex, it's been a while since you last came home in the morning. I'm sorry for making you worry. Actually, I quit my job today. I decided without telling you, and I'm really sorry about that. Why are you apologizing? What? Actually, quitting your job was the right move. Thank you for doing that. Contrary to my expectations, instead of being angry about me quitting my job, my wife thanked me with a beaming smile, and I was completely baffled. To my surprise, she then smiled sweetly and shared some news with me. A few days later, thanks to an acquaintance of my wife, I was taking an interview at a major construction company. It turned out that this acquaintance was Bob's father. After graduating high school, my wife had worked in a restaurant and obtained her nutritionist certification. 3 years ago, just after we got married, she started her own lunch stand business. She developed a variety of popular low-calorie, low-carb yet filling menus, which became a big hit, especially among office workers prone to unhealthy eating habits. The business's performance soared. Because my wife packed these signature menus for my lunch every day, my colleagues were always envious. After focusing on delivery and setting up shop in a prime downtown location, busy executives and CEOs who didn't even have time for lunch started placing orders, and that's how she met Bob's father. The day I quit, while having breakfast after an all-nighter, my wife filled me in on many things I hadn't known. Mr. Taylor has always spoken highly of you. He believed that with your talent, you should be working on bigger projects at a major company. Wait, Bob's dad knew about me. You don't realize how valued you are in the industry, from winning a top prize in a student architectural contest to expanding your company's client base. Mr. Taylor was impressed. That's nice to hear. So, it seems like they were hoping your son could grow as a licensed architect by your side, but it looks like things didn't quite work out. Training him was more challenging than any project I've ever handled. So, it's probably for the best. You shouldn't languish at your current company when you could be challenging yourself at a bigger one. Mr. Taylor is really keen on helping you find a new job. Really? Wow. Thus, I was granted an interview at a large construction firm through Mr. Taylor's referral. Though we had never met, Mr. Taylor apologized over the phone for his son's rudeness. It remains a mystery how such an impressive father could have such a clueless son. Alex, we've been expecting you. Thank you for having me today. This interview is just a formality. Your credentials are already well respected. Essentially, today is about introducing you to our company. Is that so? Yes, we'd really like to have you join us. Thank you very much. And just like that, my re-employment was smoothly secured. I stepped up to a much larger construction company and worked with even more enthusiasm than before. As a result, I am very happy to be involved in large-scale projects that were unimaginable at my previous company, such as designing government facilities, skyscrapers, and city planning. Originally, I had obtained my architect's license while still in school and had consistently won awards at the annual architecture competitions, making me a notable figure in the industry. Consequently, it seems that both my classmates and professors were shocked and worried that I might have lost my senses when I chose my previous company. Until Bob arrived, it had been a great place to work at my own pace. Since then, I have rapidly demonstrated my true capabilities, being promoted to the head of design and entrusted with one important task after another. Every one of my projects has been highly regarded by both the industry and the general public, and my name has become increasingly well known. Before I knew it, I had achieved my childhood dream of becoming an architect. All of this was thanks to my wife, Dorothy. Meanwhile, my former company suffered a major blow. The last project I worked on turned into a disaster. Afterward, Bob refused to admit his mistakes and pushed all the revision work onto other team members, claiming all the credit for himself. However, repeated critical errors came to light, leading to the client's outrage and the project being scrapped entirely. At the same time, frustrated with Bob's attitude, all the competent project members reportedly threw in the towel. They found it absurd to let Bob monopolize the results, so halfway through the project, they dumped everything on him and all moved to a rival company. Losing of its skilled designers, the company's performance plummeted. Initially, Bob seemed to be puffing himself up, thinking, "Now it's my show." However, as a newborn architect with no real experience in meticulous planning, he was bound to fail, along with the company's ineffectual executives, who couldn't advise him. Their performance rapidly deteriorated. The relationship with our clients had collapsed, and the company's financial state was now in danger. The president of my previous company, Mr. Thompson, desperate about the situation caused by Bob, appealed to President Taylor for help. As a result, Bob was forced to resign. President Taylor decided to assist in the recovery of his former company's performance by providing work and workforce as an apology for the trouble caused by his son. After being ousted, Bob was placed under his father's strict supervision and made to work vigorously. I heard rumors that Bob was seen working on construction sites, looking exhausted and getting scolded by his boss. I felt that I had truly witnessed that one's actions will eventually come back around to you. I continue to diligently work at my dream job in architecture, hoping that my sincere efforts will bring even better returns as I strive in my new role at a new company. You told me to push it until I drop, didn't you? Now because of you, my credibility is in shambles. The shouts of factory manager, Alex, echoed through the area. I told them from the start that the deadline was impossible to meet, but they insisted on going through with it anyway. I swallowed the words that were on the tip of my tongue and just listened silently to the conversation. "Didn't I tell you before? If we don't meet the deadline, you'd be responsible," he said. I think I remember him saying something like that. Alex's angry expression suddenly turned into a smile as he said, "You're fired as of today. We don't need old-timers who tarnish the company's reputation."
Fired? That's just ridiculous.
All decisions are mine to make. You caused this mess, so don't make excuses. To silence me, Alex slammed his fist on the desk with force. I was prepared to take responsibility, but being fired was completely unexpected. I begged for mercy, but there was no changing Alex's mind. Crushed by a sense of despair, I headed to bid farewell to my subordinates, unaware that yet another shocking event awaited me. My name is Tyler. I was hired mid-career at a well-known car manufacturing plant. Although I'm nearing retirement, I believe I'm as capable as the younger employees. My wife, Emily, is always concerned about me not overdoing it, but so far, my health has been fine. We were never blessed with children, but our relationship is strong. We are known as a loving couple in our neighborhood. Though we've been married for a good number of years, it hasn't been without its challenges. We've had countless disagreements over the years. When the company I worked for went bankrupt due to poor performance, it was a particularly anxious time. Reflecting on all the hardships we've overcome, I am truly grateful to have married Emily. Many of my peers complain about their wives, and hearing them makes me realize how fortunate I am. Currently, I hold the position of department head at work, though deep down I'm not satisfied. I earn more than enough, but being ambitious, I've always aspired for more. However, the company's policy requires a college degree for anyone to become a factory manager. Since my highest level of education is a high school diploma, I didn't meet the criteria. It's a frustrating rule, but there's nothing I can do about it. While my official title is department head, I am confident that I perform better than anyone else. In fact, I am often relied upon not just by my subordinates but by the factory manager as well. I handle scheduling and consultations on a daily basis, practically acting as if I were the factory manager myself. I have also earned the trust of factory managers from our client companies through my work. My life, both at home and work, has been fulfilling, and I had no significant complaints until now. This time, it has been decided that the current factory manager will retire upon reaching the mandatory retirement age. Consequently, a new factory manager will be appointed. His name is Alex. He is the son of the company president, and quite young. Although he graduated from a prestigious university, he lacked any substantial experience in manufacturing. His employment was clearly a case of nepotism. Possibly due to his graduation from a top university, Alex's pride is as high as Everest. He is an absolute egotist who looks down on everyone, including me, with utter disdain. Despite having no real-world experience as a professional, he refuses to listen to anyone else's opinions. People like you with a low education can't compare to someone like me from a top university. It was how he introduced himself at first. I was somewhat aware of the dangers of having an incompetent, prideful boss. But Alex's arrogance was beyond anything I could have imagined, making me wonder how such people even exist in this world. When a near retiree like you is just a department head, and a young guy like me is the factory manager, it really shows how important education is, he remarked when I greeted him. Alex only viewed the workers below him as mere pawns. Without proper consultations with others, he took on projects from major clients. You might think that in itself isn't a bad thing, but the problem was the deadlines. No matter how I calculated, even if we worked without days off, we couldn't meet them. Normally, we should undertake work with more leeway, but Alex hadn't considered any of that. Alex, this deadline is really unreasonable. There's no way we can meet it, I said. What? Are you criticizing the job I managed to get for us? Despite my advising Alex that it was utterly impossible, his displeasure was evident. Of course, I wasn't just nitpicking. Based on the daily production capacity of the machines and the inspection speed of the workers, all the data shows that it's impossible to meet the deadlines Alex has set. No matter how much I explained, Alex just wouldn't understand. Stop lining up excuses with this based on past data nonsense, he snapped. It's not like that, it's truly impossible, I insisted. This is just because you've all been slacking off. Act like you're robots, not humans, and work, he said dismissively. Facing Alex, who casually made outrageous demands, I felt a sense of despair. This was no longer about educational background, it was a matter of humanity. Despite my earnest attempts to persuade him, it all ended in vain. I had no choice but to do what was possible. I sought help from subcontractor factories and reluctantly asked my team to work overtime. I was filled with regret. The subcontractors and my team, knowing it was my request, willingly accepted. I was thankful for their generosity. Of course, I also tried my best to meet the deadline, working diligently. Feeling it unfair to ask my team to bear all the hardship, I stayed back and worked alone outside of working hours. Alex seemed indifferent even seeing this effort. Don't you dare miss the deadline I set, or you won't be forgiven, he said cheerily by my side as I worked silently. There was no notion of him helping out. Despite my repeated requests, he refused them all. Are you asking me, a graduate from a top university, to do menial machine work? He scoffed. Why is that considered menial? That's just prejudice, I argued. Don't get all red-faced just because I'm stating facts, he mocked. We really need more hands here, I explained. Stop relying on me, the factory manager, like that. It's pathetic for an old man near retirement to act this way. Alex said, laughing as he walked away. Dealing with him felt like a waste of energy. I gave up on getting angry or having expectations and focused solely on my work. I came home late into the night, often after the date had changed. I tried to maintain a smile so as not to worry my wife, Emily, but as one might expect from a spouse of many years. She could still sense the fatigue I couldn't completely hide from my expression.
Hey, you've been looking really busy lately, are you okay? She asked.
Just some unreasonable demands from the new factory manager. I'm okay, I assured her, though I seldom complained about work to Emily. I didn't want to worry her too much. However, seeing the fatigue I couldn't conceal, she couldn't help but care. We've faced tough times before. I'll get through this with some grit, I said, mixing in a bit of bravado as I made a small fist pump. Emily looked unconvinced, but sighed and said, just don't overdo it. You're not young anymore. I understood the difference between doing one's best and overdoing it. Right now, I was definitely overdoing it. If I were merely doing my best, Emily wouldn't be this worried. Despite racking my brain, there was no sign that Alex would do anything about the deadline. In the midst of continuous grueling work, it was clear that my subordinates were accumulating fatigue. Noticing a clear drop in work efficiency, I decided to end the workday at noon. Pushing them any harder would inevitably lead to someone collapsing. It was just a matter of time. As expected, when I explained this to Alex, he exploded in anger. What? Working until you collapse is the basic duty of a field worker. There's no such rule, and I wished he wouldn't make such arbitrary statements.
We can't go on like this. We are not robots, I asserted.
No matter how much Alex yelled at me, I was determined to protect my team. I thought he wouldn't agree, but his response was unexpected. Well, even if we don't meet the deadline, it won't be my fault, he said, smirking as if he'd come up with a cunning plan. If we don't make it, it'll just be your responsibility to bear. Fine, I'll specially allow you to end work at noon, he conceded. Though his reasoning was unsatisfactory, my priority was to give my subordinates a break. I informed everyone that we would end the workday at noon and sent them home. No job is more important than health. After sending off my subordinates, I continued working alone. The fatigue had accumulated to a point where sleep alone wouldn't cure it. Emily, as always, was the one who witnessed my state up close. Trying to alleviate my exhaustion, she went out of her way for me. One day when I came home, she had prepared my favorite dishes and some alcohol, waiting for me. Seeing the lavish dinner table, I wondered if it was some sort of anniversary.
You've been really tired from work recently, haven't you? I thought I'd do something special for you, she said.
Emily, thank you. I managed to say that, moved by her thoughtfulness. Holding back tears, I reached for the food laid out on the table. Fried chicken, steak, Caesar salad, and creamy soup. Each dish was a favorite of mine. Have a good drink tonight, she urged. I don't usually drink much, but I figured tonight was an exception. I downed the whiskey Emily poured with gusto. Perhaps the alcohol loosened my tongue. I found myself unexpectedly venting about work, something I don't usually do. Most of my complaints were about Alex, the new factory manager. I spoke about the impossible deadlines he set, his high-handed speech, and his attitude. Driven by the alcohol, I let out all my grievances. Emily silently listened to my endless rant. When I finally paused, she asked, "What's his name?" "Alex, Alex Barker," I replied. "Alex Barker," Emily murmured, her expression thoughtful as she repeated the factory manager's name. I wondered what she was thinking, but decided to let it go, and took another drink. Grateful for my wife's care, I resolved anew to do my best at work. Yet, despite our best efforts, we couldn't meet Alex's deadline. The delivery was significantly delayed. We had done everything we could. If that wasn't enough, there was nothing more to be said, as both the employees and I had given our all. Still, even with that understanding, Alex was not satisfied. I was summoned by Alex and subjected to a barrage of abuse. "You told me to keep going until you collapsed, didn't you? Now because of you, my trustworthiness is plummeting." Despite me saying from the beginning that it was impossible, they went ahead anyway. I swallowed the words that almost slipped out and silently listened to Alex's rant. "Didn't I tell you before? If we don't meet the deadline, you'd be the one to take the responsibility," he said. I think I recall him saying something like that. From an angry expression, Alex suddenly switched to a smile and said, "You're fired as of today. We don't need old-timers who damage the company's reputation." Fired? That's ridiculous. All the decision-making power is mine. The root cause is your fault, so don't make excuses. To silence me, Alex forcefully slammed his desk. I was prepared to take responsibility, but being fired was beyond unexpected. I pleaded for mercy, but there was no changing Alex's mind. I should say goodbye to my subordinates before I leave. I packed up my belongings and reported to everyone at the site that I had been fired. To my surprise, the employees all showed relieved smiles. And unbelievably, they even said, "It's good that Tyler got fired." I was so shocked I couldn't even respond. I understand why Alex might be pleased, but my subordinates being happy about my departure. But on reflection, maybe it's understandable. They must see it as retribution for making them take on unreasonable work at Alex's command. "I'm truly sorry for all the hardship I've caused," I said, deeply remorseful. As I was speaking, Alex approached. Does he still have more to say? Bracing myself, he began to speak unexpectedly. "Don't leave yet. You're coming with me to meet with a client." "What?" "We're going to apologize for this mess. You're the main cause of this mess, after all." Having my last task be an apology felt unsettling, but there was no choice. According to Alex, the client's CEO, Mr. Johnson, wanted to speak with me. Wondering what he wanted to discuss, I got into the car Alex was driving.
Useless old man, make sure you apologize sincerely.
Alex made irritating remarks as he drove, and I stared out the window in discomfort. After about an hour's drive, we arrived at the client's office and headed to the CEO's office. Though I was not convinced, it was a fact that we had missed the deadline. Reluctantly, I began to apologize. But the CEO of the large company, Mr. Johnson, hurriedly stopped me. "Hey, there's no need for that." He stopped me, but Alex seemed unsatisfied. He clicked his tongue in a volume just on the edge of audibility. "Mr. Johnson, please don't coddle him," Alex said. "What do you mean?"
The responsibility for this mess lies entirely with this man Tyler.
"Is that true?" "Yes, it is. Come on, useless old man, apologize." Alex seemed almost delighted, as if there was nothing more enjoyable in the world. "By the way, I've already fired him, so you can rest assured." "Is that so? It's good that Tyler got fired." "Right, the company only gets worse with him around. Now, we can scout him to our company without any reservations." "Wait, what?" At Mr. Johnson's comment, Alex froze in an instant. "Scout him? This old man who's close to retirement." "Alex, you're young, so you might not know this. Let me explain." "What are you talking about?" I studied from the ground up to become a CEO, and during my early days, Tyler was a great help to me. I remembered those times fondly. We used to go out for drinks quite often, though it's been less frequent these days. Moreover, regarding this issue, I'm not upset. What? But we missed the deadline. I knew the terms you proposed were unrealistic. I've been monitoring the progress with that understanding. That's... Actually, I'm impressed by how well you managed under these constraints, Mr. Johnson said, showing me a smile. It turned out, I was called in not just to be scouted, but also to be thanked. Surrounded by these unexpected developments, I returned home feeling bewildered. While having dinner with Emily, I shared today's events. Tomorrow, I think I'll go back to the company I was fired from to say goodbye properly. Didn't you already do that? It was rushed because I was called to the client's office. I want to say farewell properly. Then, as your wife, I'd like to come too. Why? That's the workplace where you've spent many years. I really want to go. I could see something like determination in Emily's eyes. It was rare for her to insist so strongly, given her usually reserved nature. All right, if you say so. Thank you. I appreciate it. The next day, I bought some small gifts at the department store before heading to the company. I handed out these gifts to each of my subordinates while saying my goodbyes. Unexpectedly, most of them were teary-eyed. They had said it was good that I was fired, yet here they were, crying. Curious, I couldn't help but ask what this was all about. Then, I heard an unexpected reason from one of my subordinates. It turns out they had been worried about me all along. They were distressed seeing me being manipulated by Alex, unable to become the factory manager, and just being used for his own ends. They believed that I could succeed in any company. Despite being fired, they thought it was for the best that I had left. They were actually happy to see me freed from an unfair and unreasonable environment. Feeling relieved that they hadn't hated me, Emily and I shared a moment of reassurance. After finishing my farewells to the team, Emily and I headed to see the factory manager, Alex. Alex, this is my wife, Emily. Alex, who had been fiddling with his phone, glanced up at Emily's face. At that moment, his face went pale. It's been a while, Alex, since that arranged meeting, right? What? Oh, you're his wife. Alex stammered, unable to hide his disturbance. I had learned yesterday that Emily knew Alex. In fact, Emily is the daughter of a big company's CEO. There's quite an age gap between us. Before we married, Emily had been set up in a matchmaking meeting with the son of a subcontractor company's president. It was Alex. However, Alex has always been prideful and arrogant. His overbearing attitude and his derogatory remarks about Emily's appearance repeatedly led, quite naturally, to the cancellation of their arranged marriage. Alex had been severely scolded by his father, but his attitude never improved. He would never have imagined that Emily would marry me. If it became known that he had been harassing the husband of a major company CEO's daughter, Alex's position would become precarious. I apologize for all the disrespect shown to your husband. Alex apologized profusely. But such actions had no impact. I overlooked your rude behavior during our meeting, but I cannot overlook the hurt you've caused to someone important to me. Please, forgive me. I will report this to my father. No. Anything but that. I'll do anything. Alex tried to plead, but it was in vain. Emily, furious, left the scene immediately. It was the first time I had seen my wife so angry. I was surprised, but even more so, I was pleased. Because her anger stemmed from someone hurting her husband. Upon returning home, Emily immediately reported everything to her father, CEO, Mr. Harrison. All of Alex's past behaviors came to light. The information spread, eventually reaching Alex's father and my former boss, President, Mr. Parker. Alex was not only severely scolded but also fired. Having previously lived comfortably under his father's patronage, he now lost that, too. Without a job, he couldn't afford his rent or living expenses and was kicked out of his apartment. Despite trying to find a new job, his arrogant nature remained unchanged, leading to repeated rejections at interviews. Having lost both his job and his place to live, he apparently ended up living on the streets. The life of a former CEO's son turned street dweller is the ultimate humiliation, and he reportedly sleeps every night with tears of frustration. Why must I, a graduate of a top university, end up like this? It's a fitting end for someone who treated people like tools and handled them carelessly. Meanwhile, I started working at a company that had scouted me from my previous dealings. Here, unlike my former company, a college degree is not necessary for advancement. Using my past experience, I quickly rose to become a factory manager. I was entrusted with one of the major company's factories, and I successfully earned trust at my new workplace. Every day is enjoyable, and even my wife can see how happy I am. I'm really glad to see you so happy, Emily said with a genuinely joyful smile. Seeing her smile, I vowed to work even harder.
It's pathetic to see the talentless licking each other's wounds. Liam, don't ever show your face in front of me again. My boss, Shane, framed me at the company I work for, and without any chance to defend myself. I was transferred to a branch office on a remote island. The situation at the new post was terrible, with a dark atmosphere and no one having any motivation. However, something happened that significantly changed my perspective. Rachel, the department head, looked at me in astonishment as I achieved a month's worth of targets in a single day. Who exactly are you? What followed was an unexpected and shocking turn of events. My name is Liam. I'm a 37-year-old single, ordinary office worker at a large corporation. By the time you're in your late 30s, most of your friends are married with kids. Some even started families right after high school, so it's not uncommon to hear that their kids are about to become adults. It's not that I didn't want to get married, I just wasn't cut out for romance. I had a girlfriend once, but our values clashed as I prioritized work while she prioritized her personal life, leading to frequent conflicts. In the end, she disappeared without a word, and our relationship naturally faded away. Since then, I've lived alone, feeling like my work was my partner. I joined my current company 5 years ago through a connection, so I still feel like a newbie. Despite that, I have reliable juniors and colleagues I can trust, making me feel blessed in terms of human relationships. I find my work fulfilling and can leverage my strengths, so there's no problem. I vaguely wished these ordinary days would continue forever. Then, one day, my life took a significant turn because of one person. First, let me explain why I changed jobs in my 30s. Though I don't have a new family of my own, I have my mother. My father passed away from an illness when I was young, so I don't have many memories of him. My mother, despite being frail, raised me single-handedly after my father's death, ensuring I never struggled. I'm deeply grateful to her. However, before I could show my gratitude, my mother was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, often called the silent killer, and passed away. This reminded me of something. When my father died, I was in elementary school, and my mother told me I wanted to become a superhero who could save people in pain. Essentially, a doctor. I studied hard from that point, and my mother supported me by sending me to a tutoring center. I wanted to attend a private middle school, but I didn't want to burden my mother. I believed that as long as I studied hard, I could become a doctor, even in public middle and high schools. So I aimed to progress while keeping costs low. However, I experienced a setback and never achieved my dream of becoming a doctor. Becoming a doctor isn't easy. Even if you become a doctor, there's no guarantee you'll become a competent one. After facing numerous obstacles and setbacks, I gave up on the medical field and decided to work as an ordinary office worker. I loved math enough to choose a science and math-focused high school, and I was close friends with someone attending a technical college. So I taught myself programming. By the time I was a student, I had the skills to create my own games. This skill is now useful in my current company. Although I had no practical experience in the IT industry, I was rigorously trained by my seniors for a few months, and after 5 years, it has become my strength. The connection that led me to this company was a friend from the technical college recommending me, and I passed the screening and interviews on my own. Of course, large corporations aren't easy to get into through connections alone. So, I take pride in getting in on my own merit. Although I'm 37, I've only been with the company for 5 years, so I don't have any positions yet and am still a regular employee. In my previous job, I was entrusted with significant responsibilities. So I'm content with the current environment where I just need to do my assigned tasks well. One day, something happened. Mason, our section chief, resigned due to personal reasons at the end of the previous year. And Shane took over from this April. I work at the headquarters, but we have branches all over the US. Shane, who had been the manager at this branch, was promoted to section chief at the headquarters due to his exceptional skills. I was assigned to the system development section of the systems department. Shane's programming skills were so impressive that when I saw his efficient and clean source code, I couldn't help but say, wow. The system development section was buzzing with excitement over having such a talented individual join, but soon tension began to fill the air. This was because Shane distinguished employees based on their capabilities. Being highly capable himself, Shane looked down on employees who weren't as skilled, almost as if they were something dirty. He was incredibly kind to employees who were quick and produced high-quality work, like the senior who had taught me. But he was harsh and sometimes outright unreasonable to those who didn't meet his standards. I believed that with patient guidance and practical experience, anyone could grow, as that had been my own experience. But Shane dismissed this as a waste of time and cost. He continued working with those who could keep up with him and relegated those who couldn't do menial tasks, saying they were just in the way. As a regular employee with average performance, I didn't catch much of Shane's attention. However, the incident with my colleague Jessica plunged me into a downward spiral. Jessica had joined the company as a mid-career hire just 6 months ago. She was very meticulous and had a pleasant demeanor, which earned her respect from Mason as well. But because Jessica's thoroughness made her slow, sometimes taking twice as long as others. Mason said about that, she's only been with us a short time and will grow with experience. However, to Shane, who prioritized efficiency, Jessica became a nuisance and, unfortunately, was chosen as the target of his sarcasm. Shane would call Jessica out at every opportunity. He would then unnecessarily berate her in front of everyone, loudly pointing out even minor mistakes like typos. At first, Jessica endured it, but she eventually reached her breaking point and began to cry. The other employees, knowing that speaking up would only make things worse, looked on helplessly. Shane then sighed dramatically and said, "Crying won't fix anything. I don't play favorites based on gender. You're being scolded because you're incompetent." Jessica's shoulders trembled, and she bit her lip in humiliation. Jessica certainly wasn't trying to use her tears to gain sympathy. But being spoken to like that must have deeply hurt her pride. Unable to stand by and watch any longer, I intervened. "Shane, that's enough. This approach is wrong. Yelling at someone in front of everyone won't make them work faster. Please show some consideration." This consideration included not only Jessica but also the other employees who were silently enduring the situation. However, Shane was angered by my defiance. In short, I became his new target. Even though he had previously paid no attention to me, he started scrutinizing my background after my intervention. He discovered that I had only been with the company for 5 years and had been recommended by a friend. He took advantage of that and started calling me recommendation rookie. My colleagues, who had shared many experiences with me over the past 5 years, did not call me that and supported me. But I am only human. Being called that made me feel bad, and employees from other departments who didn't know the full story started to look at me with disdain. Although my friend tried to explain, Shane's influence was too strong. As a result, I became ostracized outside of the system development section, and Shane delivered the final blow. He took away all the work I had diligently been doing. His reason was simple: he said he couldn't trust me. If Shane had been an incompetent person, it would have been easier, but unfortunately, he was an elite. Clients had no problem with Shane taking over my responsibilities, so they didn't complain. Upper management assumed that I had abandoned my work and Shane was picking up the slack. Consequently, I was exiled. I was reassigned to a branch on a remote island I had never heard of. In effect, it was a demotion, and I felt lost about what to do next. But time waits for no one. I had to completely hand over my current tasks by the end of the month, move by mid-next month, and start working by the end of the month. Despite being overwhelmed with work, I managed to complete the necessary procedures by the end of the month. As I was saying my goodbyes to the employees, Jessica approached me with an apologetic look on her face. "I'm really sorry that you got pushed out because of me, Liam. It's my fault for not doing my job properly and not standing up for you. I'm truly sorry," she said, her voice breaking with emotion. Of course, none of this was Jessica's fault. I never thought that my transfer was because of her. Instead, I convinced myself that it was my own fault for standing up to Shane without thinking. "It's not your fault, Jessica. It's my lack of ability that's the problem." Just then, a voice called out from behind. "It's pathetic to see the talentless licking each other's wounds. Liam, I never want to see your face again. Don't show up at the headquarters unless you have a reason. Even if you do, don't talk to me." After saying this, Shane snorted and walked away. A tense atmosphere filled the room, so I forced a smile and tried to part with everyone amicably. Soon after, I resolved to somehow achieve results at the new branch and return to the headquarters. I wanted to prove the upper management wrong for this unreasonable transfer and restore the honor of my friends who had been disgraced because of me. With these feelings, I arrived at the branch on the remote island, but the reality was far harsher than I expected. Caught up in my busy schedule, I hadn't researched much about this branch, but I discovered a shocking truth. This branch had the lowest sales in the entire country. As soon as I stepped into the office, I understood why. The employees looked gloomy and unmotivated. The heavy atmosphere and lackluster conversations made me mutter under my breath, "This is unbelievable." Despite the situation, I introduced myself, but an employee responded, "Just keep it simple, that's how we do things here." Which left me even more perplexed. Then, a clear voice echoed in my ears. "You must be Liam, the new recruit. I've heard about you. Let's do our best together." Turning around, I saw a tall, beautiful woman, almost as tall as I am, standing there. Her name was Rachel. She was the head of the systems department at this remote island branch. Unlike the other unmotivated employees, Rachel seemed full of energy and enthusiasm. After 2 months of working under Rachel, I learned the ropes of the job here. And I realized something important. Rachel was incredibly competent at her job, with no flaws in that regard. However, there was one thing that bothered me. Rachel's enthusiasm seemed to be misdirected. Unlike the headquarters, where there was a separate sales department, the remote island branch's sales division was integrated into the systems department. Rachel ended up doing sales rounds because the sales staff lacked motivation. While Rachel's client interactions weren't bad, her proposals seemed too focused on boosting the company's sales. I felt she wasn't genuinely connecting with the clients, and it seemed they sensed it too. As a result, even good proposals lacked the decisive impact, and clients were hesitant to agree. This pattern repeated several times, and I understood why this branch's sales were so low. Rachel's enthusiasm was misdirected, and the other employees only did the bare minimum, ignoring their quotas. No promotions even if you work hard, because it's a remote island branch. This phrase became a demoralizing mantra that sapped everyone's motivation. 3 months passed since I joined the remote island branch. I finished my initial training and was about to start working independently. Since I was already used to working solo at the headquarters, I wasn't worried about that aspect. However, I encountered a problem here. "Alright, from now on, you're a fully fledged member of our team. But you still have a long way to go. To impress everyone at the headquarters, you must meet this quota. You want to return to the headquarters with outstanding achievements, right?" To be honest, I no longer had such ambitions. I realized that I had been influenced by the lack of motivation among the other employees. Reflecting on it now, it's clear that I found Rachel's well-meaning meddling to be annoying. Of course, I had no objections to being given the same quotas as the others. But I felt the need to correct her misunderstanding that I wanted to return to the headquarters. However, it's rare to find a boss who cares this much about one employee. Rachel must understand the dire state of this entire branch. Yet, she's still working so positively. I felt that telling her it's fine would be like denying her efforts, so I swallowed the words that were about to come out. One day, while continuing with my sales and system development duties, it was past 7 p.m. by the time I got back to the office due to a customer's schedule. No one in this office voluntarily stays late. I expected the office to be empty, but the lights were still on. Thinking someone had forgotten to turn them off, I opened the door to find Rachel staring at her computer under a single light, surrounded by stacks of paperwork. I couldn't help but speak up. "What are you doing here at this hour? Don't you have a young daughter? Shouldn't you be going home?" Rachel noticed my voice and turned towards me with a wry smile. "Oh, it's fine. Even though I'm a single mom, I live with my parents, and my daughter understands. I told you to go straight home, didn't I? Did you forget something?" Rachel had mentioned that she became a single mother after her husband passed away from an illness and now lives with her elderly parents and daughter. Although life would be easier in the city, Rachel's father, who lives with her, has an illness and is receiving treatment at the only hospital on this remote island. So, she chose to live here deliberately. Her father was adamant about not leaving for the city center, wanting to spend his last days at the remote island where he was born and raised. They couldn't afford the high costs of advanced medical care in the city, so home treatment was the main option. Rachel works so hard, even spinning her wheels, because she has a family to protect. Even if she's resented or complained about, she works late into the night for the sake of her beloved daughter and parents. I felt ashamed for ever thinking of Rachel as a nuisance. I sat down beside Rachel's desk and said, "I'm sure your daughter feels lonely, even if she doesn't say so. And this workload, it's not just your job. Is it? Let me help you. Let's at least finish the essential tasks." I then took half of the stacked documents. Rachel looked at me with surprise. I felt a connection to Rachel's daughter. Perhaps because I was raised by a single mother myself. My mother also worked tirelessly to raise me well, so she was rarely home. Knowing she worked hard for me, I never voiced my loneliness. So, I'm sure Rachel's daughter is also trying to be a good girl, even if she's lonely. As I sorted the documents, I asked Rachel, "How can you keep working so hard in this situation?" Rachel smiled softly and replied, "I want the big shots at the headquarters to recognize me. As the breadwinner, if I earn a lot, my family can live comfortably. And my late husband always said that if you smile, things will go well. So no matter how tough it gets, I never lose my smile. That's all there is to it." Rachel's words and her earnest demeanor deeply moved me. Though I felt ashamed of my past self, regretting it wouldn't change anything. So, I decided to start fresh from tomorrow. With that resolve, I finished the work in front of me and left the office by 8 p.m. The next day, I arrived at the office and started moving briskly to meet my assigned quotas. I approached the slacking employees and said, "If you're free, could you help with this? I've already reviewed it with Rachel, so it should only need minor adjustments." In reality, I was just returning the work that Rachel had been covering for the other employees. One of the slackers, Miles, came over and said, "But Rachel took it on, so she should handle it, right?" That might have been fine until now. But continuing like this would perpetuate a negative spiral where hard-working people get the short end of the stick. Rachel didn't take on extra work because she wanted to. I'm not just randomly assigning tasks. For example, these documents I handed to you, Miles, are actually your responsibilities. You can handle them quickly, can't you? Do you want to stay stagnant here? Personally, I'd hate to be outperformed by someone who was transferred from the headquarters, I said provocatively, watching Miles gulp. The next moment, Miles laughed loudly and said, "Wow, Liam, the new guy who's been here for 3 months, is telling me this? Guys, are we just going to sit around and watch this?" Then he went back to his desk and started working. His attitude seemed to influence the other employees, who followed suit, saying, "Yeah, he's right," and returned to their desks. Rachel observed all this quietly. In fact, she had told me something on the way out yesterday. Miles is a mood maker. He used to be very motivated and serious about his work. But he realized no one at the headquarters cares about the lowest sales branch. His motivation dropped, and he dragged everyone else down with him. But I think if we can just flip his switch, he could be amazing again. After that, Rachel continued to tell us about the characteristics of each employee. I took all that information to heart and thought about how to ignite each person's motivation. As a result, the employees influenced by Miles started working with a new vigor, as if their instincts had been awakened. Seeing such teamwork, which was rare in the city, filled me with a warm feeling. The people here must have been working while respecting each other's feelings and attitudes. That's why Miles, as a mood maker, was so important. A few hours later, I stood before Rachel to report on the day's work. Rachel received the report and, alternating between looking at me and the report, exclaimed in disbelief. "You completed a month's worth of targets in just one day? No way, this is unbelievable. The sales are at an all-time high. And you're indisputably number one. Who are you really? I heard you were demoted from the headquarters. But someone this capable being demoted doesn't make sense." Rachel then asked how I ended up assigned here. I hadn't planned to answer, but her persistent questions left me no choice. With a wry smile, I explained what had happened at the headquarters. The target Rachel mentioned was likely set by the headquarters, underestimating this branch due to its poor sales. For me, this task was simple enough to complete within a week, even if it took some time. This time, I did it in a day to boost everyone's motivation, which wasn't particularly extraordinary. Shane, who had sent me here, would probably say it's expected. While explaining my situation, Rachel suddenly stood up, visibly angry. She said it was an unfair transfer and that she would protest. But I calmed her down. "Thank you, but it's all right." At first, I was bewildered, but seeing you and everyone's attitude today, I realized I'm glad I came here. There's a spirit of cooperation and warm human relationships. Plus, living on an island is like enjoying a slow life. I don't want to go back to the headquarters, I want to work here with everyone. As I said, Rachel looked momentarily bewildered. However, she quickly broke into a beaming smile, patted my back, and said, "Looking forward to working with you. You're the shining star of this branch." 6 months had passed since I came to the remote island branch. Contrary to the belief that low sales were due to the employees' lack of motivation, the actual issue lay in the system. Headquarters and branches near cities could easily attract people, bringing in talented individuals. In contrast, rural and remote island branches constantly struggled with staffing issues, and this branch was no exception. Most skilled technicians preferred working at city branches or the headquarters, leaving us with very few proficient in programming. When I tweaked the system structure, sales increased significantly. The numbers spoke for themselves. Previously, our transactions were limited to within the remote island, but recently, we've been getting constant requests from the mainland to use the systems developed by our branch. I simply utilized the skills I had honed over the years, and with the efforts of my colleagues who went to the mainland for sales, we achieved these results together. Everyone was happy, and I felt satisfied contributing to the progress of IT on this remote island. One day, Rachel made an announcement. "Everyone, listen. Due to our significant increase in sales and contributions to system development, we're receiving special bonuses. And we've shed the shame of being the lowest grossing branch in the network. All thanks to everyone's hard work over the past few months." She suggested a celebratory party tonight, enthusiastically offering to treat everyone. Knowing Rachel was a single mother, we hesitated, but she insisted on sharing her bonus with everyone. Having learned that Rachel wouldn't back down once she decided on something, we all eventually accepted her offer. After work, we had our celebration at the best-rated barbecue place in the remote island. However, towards the end, Rachel stepped out with a pale face, clutching her phone. Concerned, I followed her and found her unusually distraught, shouting into her phone. "No, it can't be true. My father collapsed. Is there no way to save him?" Rachel was so panicked that, despite holding her phone to her ear, it was on speaker, and I could hear the conversation. Her father had collapsed at home and been rushed to the hospital. He was in critical condition, unconscious, and while they managed some emergency treatment, he needed surgery. But the remote island's only hospital had just one surgeon, Dr. Kenneth, who had identified the problem but found the surgery too complex for the nurses who had no experience with such cases. If only there were another surgeon. They could airlift him to a city hospital, but the helicopter had just left with a critically ill pregnant woman. Even at the earliest, it would take an hour for the helicopter to return. In this dire situation, Rachel, with tears streaming down her face, continued to plead with Dr. Kenneth over the phone. "Dr. Kenneth, please, save my father. I don't care how much it costs, just save him." Rachel's father was in critical condition, and Rachel seemed to be losing her composure. Unable to stand by and watch any longer, I approached Rachel. "I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but we need to get to your father quickly. I'll let Miles know about the bill and have him explain to everyone. They'll understand. Plus, I haven't had any alcohol, so I'll drive us right now." There was no time to persuade the stunned Rachel. I took her by the hand, helped her into my car, and we rushed to the hospital. When we arrived at the hospital room where Rachel's father had been taken, her mother and daughter were already there, staring at us. Dr. Kenneth explained the current situation as soon as Rachel arrived. It was as we feared. We could only hope her father would hold on until the helicopter returned. Realizing she might be witnessing her husband's final moments, Rachel's mother looked somber. Her daughter, still in elementary school, seemed confused as she looked back and forth between her mother and grandmother. I had no place to intervene. I didn't have the right to do anything. But I couldn't just stand by and watch. I'm a doctor. Although I'm currently working as an engineer under Rachel, I used to be an emergency physician. I have experience in surgery. "Dr. Kenneth, could I assist you?" Everyone turned to look at me. Dr. Kenneth, surprised, said, "What?" But when I showed my medical license, which I always carried with my ID, his expression changed. Immediately, an office staff member verified my credentials, confirming I was indeed a licensed doctor. Dr. Kenneth asked, "How long has it been since you last practiced?" It had been some time, but my body still remembered the routines and procedures from my days as a medical student, intern, and emergency physician. No, it was ingrained. "Yes, I can do it." With that single sentence, Dr. Kenneth nodded firmly. We quickly proceeded with the paperwork to contract me as a freelance doctor, and Dr. Samuel, the head of the hospital, pleaded, "Please, save her father." As everyone prayed, Rachel's father was sedated and taken into surgery. I worked tirelessly alongside Dr. Kenneth and the available nurses. Several hours later, as the sun was rising, the surgery was finally over. Rachel, who hadn't slept at all, ran towards me. Her eyes were shadowed with exhaustion. "Liam, is he?" Hearing her weak voice, I could tell what a tough time she had been through in those hours. Wanting to reassure her, I smiled and said, "The surgery was a success. It'll take some time for him to wake up, and even then, he'll need to stay at a mainland hospital for further treatment and observation, but the worst is over." Hearing this, Rachel, who usually exuded strength, broke down like a child, sobbing and collapsing to the floor. "You're not just an amazing engineer, but also a doctor? Stop surprising me." As she sobbed, I gently rubbed her back until she calmed down. A year later, I left the company, much to everyone's regret. I decided to leave because of Dr. Samuel's persistent offers and the realization of the severe issues facing remote island healthcare. I had left medicine to escape the harsh realities of being an emergency physician. Witnessing tragic scenes and feeling hopeless had pushed me to my limit. Even though my dream was to save lives, I couldn't face my inner conflicts. After quitting medicine, I remembered my interest in programming from my student days and pursued it intensely. Around that time, a friend recommended me to the company. I never planned to return to medicine. But now, I realize I had been too self-focused and not empathetic enough towards patients. Now, I can face patients sincerely without feeling the fear I once did. I work as a general practitioner at the hospital and also collaborate with my former company on system development when I have time. Medical and IT fields may seem entirely different, but they are closely related. Nowadays, there are even universities where you can study both simultaneously. Here in remote island, I'm likely the only one capable of excelling in both fields. So, I feel most fulfilled now, using my skills for the benefit of everyone. One day, when everything seemed to be going smoothly, I received news that a family had come from the city to visit a girl hospitalized in the pediatric ward. Previously, another doctor had been in charge of her case, but with their retirement, I was appointed as the successor. Coincidentally, during my medical student days, I had researched the illness the girl was suffering from and even wrote my thesis on it. This might have influenced the decision to appoint me as her new doctor. The girl's family was originally from this remote island, but her father worked on the mainland, returning only once every few months. To my surprise, her father was Shane, the very person who had sent me to this remote island. Shane had already been informed by his wife about the change in the attending physician and, of course, knew it was me. I braced myself for the possibility of hearing more sarcastic remarks or demands to change the doctor. But instead, Shane nodded with respect and slowly began to speak. "I heard you've been researching my daughter's illness. You must have realized that the girl you are treating is my daughter." Indeed, I knew from her medical records that Shane was her father. But that didn't matter to me. If someone is in need right in front of me, I will lend a hand. That's all there is to it, I said with a smile. Tears welled up in Shane's eyes. "I regret what I did to you. I know an apology isn't enough, so feel free to resent me as much as you want. I originally came from this remote islands branch and was promoted to section chief at the headquarters. At that time, I was overwhelmed with my daughter's illness and focused solely on securing my position. After you left, Jessica told me that no one would follow me if I continued like that. I was surprised that the once timid Jessica had said something like that. Jessica had been burdened by guilt over my transfer, believing it was her fault. She had tried to negotiate with upper management to bring me back and had confronted Shane with her opinions. This gave her confidence, and now she could express her views. Shane had since stepped down from his position at the headquarters and returned to this branch. Is that okay? What's the point of earning lots of money if I can't be there for my daughter when she needs me? Rachel told me about her father's situation. Shane said with a melancholic smile. Hearing him speak this way, I saw a reflection of my past self, who couldn't empathize with others because I was too focused on my struggles. It made me realize that Shane was also a troubled human being. Without saying more, Shane placed his hand over his heart and said, "Please take care of my daughter," before entering the hospital room. I don't believe that everyone can always understand each other, and I know that once tangled threads can't easily be untangled. But if we don't forget to respect one another, understanding is possible. I realized that acknowledging others while recognizing oneself is the best way to bridge the gap between us. My name is Alex Johnson, 35 years old. If I hadn't had that encounter, I might still be a timid and unremarkable guy. Good job today. Thanks, you too. I respond briefly with a smile to my co-worker's greeting. Though it's been a while since I was last at the headquarters, the renovated interior makes it feel like a completely different company, leaving me feeling a bit uneasy. I'm an ordinary-looking office worker, but perhaps because I grew up in a rural area, I'm a bit excited about living in the city for the first time in years. As I walk through the floor, I suddenly notice a painting hanging in the hallway. It's a picture of a lush, green countryside. The simple painting brings back memories of my bittersweet teenage years. Yes, I think it's no exaggeration to say that back then, I experienced the love of a lifetime. It was 18 years ago, a day I will never forget. In my junior year of high school, I was seated next to a beautiful girl with striking bobbed hair and almond-shaped eyes. Her intelligent profile, long slender limbs, and flawlessly smooth white skin. Her name was Olivia. She was somewhat of a celebrity at our school. She transferred in during the winter of our sophomore year and topped the class in the very next finals. Transferring in during such a time was rare enough, but her immediate academic success at our competitive high school caused quite a stir. And with her refined beauty, even senior students would come to our classroom just to see her. Not only did our classmates try to make their moves on her, there were also rumors that even popular upperclassmen confessed. The captain of the soccer team, the ace of the judo team, the vice captain of the tennis team, the prince of the basketball team, the top scorer of the volleyball team, the list of those who confessed to her and were turned down was endless. There were so many who got rejected that new rumors started circulating. People said she was engaged to a wealthy heir or dating a handsome college student from a prestigious university or involved with an elite from a certain medical school. Even upperclassmen were gossiping about her. But Olivia didn't seem to care about any of it. She didn't engage with the students watching her from afar and, more obviously, she didn't make friends. Always engrossed in a paperback book with a cover. She would stare intently at her book and turn the pages with her delicate fingers. She was seen as an unapproachable type. Needless to say, even though we were sitting next to each other, we had never had a single conversation. So I never imagined that we would grow closer in such a way. It was a sweltering afternoon just before the summer vacation, with the sun blazing down. Most of the students had already gone home after the closing ceremony. In the early afternoon, I was running down the hallway, out of breath. I had left all the handouts for summer assignments in the classroom. Forgetting to wipe the sweat running down my face, I yanked the classroom door open, and what I saw made me stop in my tracks. There was Olivia, slumped over her desk, asleep. Next to her was a paperback book. She must have fallen asleep while reading. As I got closer, I could see a faint sheen of sweat on her forehead. It was a scorching afternoon. If she got heatstroke, it would be terrible. I was honestly hesitant to speak to her, as we had hardly ever talked. That adolescent sense of embarrassment. But this wasn't the time for that. Determined, I was about to wake her up when my eyes fell on the paperback book next to her. Unlike usual, its cover was removed. At that moment, Olivia stirred. She stretched and slowly got up. When she looked up at me, her eyes remained unfocused for a while. I wonder how much time had passed. Unable to bear the silence, I spoke up, and Olivia suddenly widened her eyes and glanced at the paperback book. She immediately yelled and hid the book. I was the one who was taken aback by the volume of her voice, which was so unlike her usual self. I also let out a shout and involuntarily recoiled. "Did you see?" Her expression, looking at me awkwardly, appeared to be a bit childish than usual. The paperback book, usually covered, now revealed. What was she reading? She was always described as mysterious. Through the gap in her arms hiding the book, I saw it wasn't a paperback but a somewhat obscure boys' comics. The kind of mischievous comics elementary school boys read. We stared at each other in silence. It didn't take long for the distance between Olivia and me to shrink after that. It turned out I was also a fan of the comics she was reading. Once we started talking. She was far from the mysterious image she appeared to be. She was as chatty and straightforward as any of our female classmates. Well, I can't help it. I've got this stiff appearance, and I can't just say, I actually love comics, out of nowhere, can I? She spoke frankly, munching on a sandwich behind the gym. Since then, we started hanging out at that same spot after school, talking about anything while holding our study guides. Sometimes, we'd teach each other and talk about our favorite comics. Before Olivia took the top spot, I was actually the number one in our grade. While she had taken my place at the top, I didn't feel any bitterness. More than that, I felt incredibly happy, elated, and a bit giddy to have a friend with whom I could share and get excited about our studies. Olivia gradually started talking to other classmates after the summer vacation. But it still seemed like she wasn't fully opening up to them. Her tone of voice was different. When I pointed this out once, she brushed it off lightly, saying, "Really? But I talk normally with you, so it's no big deal." It didn't seem to bother her much. We had a mutual understanding to keep it a secret from everyone else. With her long eyelashes and those lips that spun humorous words, who wouldn't fall in love with her? My Adam's apple bobbed. Her profile was truly as beautiful as a sculpture. One day, when I showed a bit of insecurity, "You're at it again," Olivia said with exasperation, slapping me on the back. "You're very talented, Alex. You should have more confidence." Olivia was always there to give me a push when I needed it. At some point, I truly fell for the girl who was always encouraging me. However, our relationship came to an end in the fall of our senior year. "What's that?" Olivia muttered in a low tone. I kept my gaze down, wandering around silently. "You promised, didn't you? We'd aim for K University together." I couldn't bring myself to look directly at her as she whispered in a fading voice. It was a time when we were deep into our college entrance exams. As the wind started to feel chilly, I had been accepted to T University on a recommendation. I hadn't told Olivia that I was aiming for a recommendation. We had promised each other about half a year ago to aim for K University together. T University is a great school, but... Olivia paused. When I cautiously glanced up, our eyes met as she was staring at me intently. "With your ability, you could have definitely aimed for K University, right? Her gaze was unwavering. Unable to withstand it, I looked down again. I'm sorry. Yes, I had run away from the college entrance exam competition. We both aimed for the business school at K University. Among the private universities known for their difficulty, K University's business school was particularly popular, with intense competition. Our mock exam scores both placed us at C rank. It was hard to say we would get in easily. Still, Olivia would undoubtedly continue to aim for K University. With her relentless drive and strong will, she would surely succeed in the exams. But I was scared. I kept imagining a scenario where only Olivia got in. I couldn't picture myself passing the exam for K University, and I started losing focus while studying. I started to fear I wouldn't get accepted anywhere. That's when I grabbed the chance for a recommendation from T University. If I got greedy, I might end up not getting accepted anywhere. Failing K University, and then regret not choosing the recommendation from T University would have been too late. Not getting accepted anywhere would be hell. So, when I was accepted, I felt an immense sense of relief. Are you really okay with that? Olivia muttered quietly. I remained silent for a while, then slowly nodded. I see. The reason I chose T University was because I wasn't confident about getting into K University. That was a big factor, but even if I did get in, with my current academic level, I would barely keep up with the classes. I could only envision myself getting exhausted from the relentless studying every day. I couldn't see my future at K University. I deeply regretted making an easy promise to aim for K University with Olivia. But I couldn't bring myself to say it to Olivia, who was steadily moving toward her goal. After silently looking at me for a while, Olivia finally said, "Congratulations, Alex," and smiled. That was her answer. Olivia quietly walked past me as I stood there in shock. Left alone, I felt crushed by the sense of defeat that had surfaced alongside my relief when I got the recommendation. Since that day, I never went back to our spot behind the gym. As expected, Olivia got into K University, and I went to T University. We both secured admission to prestigious universities and were congratulated by those around us, but we never exchanged smiles. We didn't keep in touch after that, and neither of us attended reunions, so I had no idea what Olivia was doing. 5 years after that farewell. At 23, I ran into Olivia by chance in the city. I was working for a company, and Olivia was working for another. We started meeting again, drawn to each other. We were probably just young back then. Now, I think I can understand your feelings and choices a little better, Alex. Olivia, now a bit more mature, said this with a smile. I didn't know what had happened. Olivia didn't want to talk about it, and I didn't push her. But Olivia often had a weary expression. Something must have changed her perspective. But Olivia never talked about it. Naturally, I didn't share anything about the 5 years after we parted ways. Not long after, we got married. However, less than a year later, I was assigned a new post overseas. Olivia didn't want to quit her job at the time, so she couldn't move with me, but she also didn't want to be in a long-distance relationship. So, within just a year of marriage, we faced our separation for the second time. I don't know where Olivia is or what she's doing now. But knowing Olivia, I'm sure she's still pushing forward and doing her best. Drawn in by a painting, I found myself uncharacteristically sentimental. My thoughts were brought back to reality by cheerful laughter coming from ahead. Shaking my head lightly, I looked up to see a man walking with exaggerated gestures, followed by a woman smiling slightly. As they passed by, the man's arm, gesturing grandly, bumped into my shoulder. Watch where you're going. It wasn't me who said that, it was him. Even though he was the one who bumped into me. Oh, sorry. I apologized reflexively. The woman behind him looked at me with a tense expression. Olivia. I found myself saying out loud. Alex. Huh? You know each other? The man looked at us, surprised. Why are you here? Ignoring the man, I spoke to Olivia. I got a new job 6 months ago. Olivia squinted nostalgically. Oh, an old classmate, huh? What a coincidence. The man, seemingly displeased with being left out, joined the conversation. Alex, right? Nice to meet you. I'm Joshua, head of the planning department. Joshua emphasized his title as head of the planning department. I remembered hearing about a young guy who had been promoted for his achievements 6 months ago. Our company, being a foreign firm, decided positions entirely based on merit, without regard for seniority. Some people even got promoted to executive positions in their 20s. Nice to meet you. Oh, don't worry about formalities. We're probably close in age, so no need to be overly polite. Joshua interrupted me with a friendly smile. He had a look that seemed to say, see how nice I am? By the way, Olivia is my direct subordinate. At first, I wondered if it was okay to have a newly joined woman suddenly in the planning department. But she's full of ideas and always reliable. My work wife. Joshua looked at Olivia, seeking her agreement with a right. Olivia smiled beautifully. Oh, please don't call me that. I'm the one who's always relying on you, Joshua. Joshua seemed satisfied with her response and nodded with a broad smile. From Olivia's reaction, it seemed my work wife was a term Joshua used to indicate he liked Olivia. Hey, you. Joshua shifted his gaze from Olivia to me, as if he had just remembered something. Newbie, could you go get us some coffee from over there? We just finished an important meeting. And I was thinking of taking a break with my work wife, Olivia. He pointed to a vending machine with a jerk of his chin. So, this is what they call being sent on an errand. Hey, Joshua, could you stop calling me your work wife? Oops, sorry. I just can't help saying it. You are just so adorable. Noticing my dumbfounded expression, Joshua added, don't worry, I'll pay for it. I only have a $100 bill right now. Let me know your department and name later, he said, waving his hand as he headed toward the break room. I sighed and thought, do I have any change? As I started toward the vending machine. Just then, it happened. Mr. Vice President. Everyone stopped in their tracks at the voice coming from behind. Turning around, I saw a tall, slender woman with a slightly stern expression standing there. What are you doing here? She walked briskly toward me and handed me a stack of documents. Chairman Miller has been looking for you. I've prepared the requested materials, so please review them before the meeting starts. Joshua and Olivia were speechless. I awkwardly accepted the documents from the woman. The meeting isn't until this evening. I was trying to avoid being caught. I understand, but it's important to have tea with the executives. I didn't say it out loud, but my thoughts, most of his talk is just complaining, and I hate it, must have shown on my face. The woman sighed and said, I've informed them that you have been summoned by President Davis before the meeting, so it will be brief. Hearing this, I made a small victory gesture, which seemed to confuse Joshua even more. No way, Vice President? Yes, exactly. The woman cut off Joshua. The official announcement was made at noon today, so it's understandable that you weren't aware. Mr. Johnson will be promoted to Vice President starting next month. I am Katie, his secretary. Katie gave a slight bow to Joshua and Olivia. Joshua's face turned pale as he opened and closed his mouth wordlessly. Behind him, Olivia, with wide eyes, stared at me. I shrugged slightly. Sorry, did I surprise you? It's more than just a surprise. Olivia bit into a sandwich at a nearby cafe. Her manner of speaking and the way she ate hadn't changed since those days, and I found myself smiling unconsciously. After that, Joshua apologized profusely to me, almost in tears. Watching him with a cold gaze, I quietly asked Katie before the meeting. Was it really necessary to call me vice president in front of them when my appointment is next month? She deeply bowed, saying, I'm sorry, I got a little angry. President Davis, who had been watching this exchange, just laughed. Vice President, really? You've worked so hard. Olivia murmured, placing her sandwich on the table and reaching for her coffee. Back in high school, Olivia loved sweet things. Now she drinks black coffee, I noted to myself. I always felt I needed to properly apologize and thank you, Olivia. Olivia's eyes wavered with confusion. What do you mean? For breaking our promise, and for breaking up when I moved overseas. You were right, Alex. Like I mentioned before, I understand even better now. I started sharing a story with Olivia that I had never told before. When we were 22, because Olivia didn't like talking about the past, I hadn't talked about it either. It was after graduating high school and enrolling at T University. At T University, I threw myself into studying and extracurricular activities with all my might. All to build my self-confidence. I had always hated my own weakness. I could never take decisive action at critical moments. Fearful of failure, I hesitated to take on challenges. I always chose the safe path, afraid of what might happen if I failed. How many times have I been cursed by this personality of mine? I ended up running away from the entrance exams and from the person I loved. That regret had always been with me. So, in college, I decided to change myself. I resolved to do everything I could. I was more active than I could have ever imagined. I seized every opportunity to challenge myself. I boldly took on things I had never done before or thought might be difficult. And once I started something, I gave it my all within my abilities. I valued taking responsibility for my challenges. All of this was driven by Olivia. If we ever met again, I wanted to tell her that I had lived a life without regrets. Living a proactive college life was busy but fulfilling, and I found myself truly enjoying it. I actively attended classes and obtained every qualification I could. I energetically participated in volunteer work and community service activities. Then came the job search. I visited various companies, but I was captivated by Mr. Davis, the then vice president, who is now president. He spoke passionately about the company's merits. There was no seniority system. Everything was merit-based. I wanted to test myself in such an environment, and it's been 13 years since I decided to join the company. I never imagined I'd make vice president. I took a sip of coffee to hide my slight embarrassment. Olivia, who had been staring at me, sighed and looked down. I never talked about it, but back during the college entrance exams, I thought you were a fool for running away from yourself, Alex. No matter how tough it got, if you hadn't run away back then, we could have both gotten into K University and had an exciting college life together. Olivia's words were spot on. Yeah, you're right. I did run away back then. No, you didn't. Olivia lifted her gaze to me. You were right. If you weren't confident, it was okay to run. I realized later that forcing yourself to fight despite the burden on your heart isn't the only correct answer. As she spoke, Olivia looked down again. Her long eyelashes were the same, but she seemed less confident than before, which had always concerned me. Then Olivia began to speak, hesitantly, about her life after graduation, something she had never talked about before. She entered K University, meeting everyone's expectations. She aimed to have the best college life after enrolling. But K University was tough. She found herself surrounded by extremely smart people and felt an insurmountable wall, no matter how hard she studied. Keeping up with the classes was all she could manage. She couldn't understand the material, and assignments took her 10 times longer than others, yielding poor grades. Despite her efforts, her grades didn't improve. Worse yet, she was outperformed by people who treated their studies half-heartedly. Olivia's motivation had always been to work hard and achieve good grades to get results. The harder she worked, the better the results would be. She loved the moments when she could see the results of her efforts and praise herself. She enjoyed feeling that all her hard work had paid off. But gradually, her efforts stopped leading to results. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't get good results. She kept getting overtaken by her peers. If it was this hard in the first year, she feared she would fall behind even more in the increasingly specialized second and third years. She was overwhelmed by a vague sense of fear every day. Even if she dedicated all her time to studying, sacrificing socializing, meals with friends, and extracurricular activities, her results barely scraped by. The classes were fast-paced, and she couldn't keep up. Just taking notes from the board took all her effort, and when she reviewed them at home, it took hours to understand what she had written. Olivia, always studying and not socializing, had no one she could call a friend, no one to casually ask for help. Her classmates effortlessly understood the lessons and enjoyed their free time. She couldn't bring herself to ask them for help, fearing they would mock her. She couldn't admit to anyone that despite studying constantly, she could barely keep up with the class. She couldn't ask the teachers directly. She had no friends. She couldn't talk to her parents about it either. Her parents, who had always seen her as an exemplary student, would be saddened to hear she was struggling so much in college. They might be disappointed in her. Olivia, feeling desperate, strained herself until she couldn't attend university anymore. It took me a year to recover, both mentally and physically. Of course, I had to repeat a year, Olivia said with a self-deprecating laugh. Even when she wanted to work hard, her body wouldn't move. She couldn't even think straight. Her mind was in a fog. Even taking a bath or having a meal was a struggle for me back then. When she tried to go to school, she would turn back at the gate, overcome with fear. When she tried to open a textbook, her hands would tremble. She felt an overwhelming urge to escape. Her heart would race, and she couldn't stay still. This state of affairs went on, back and forth, until a year had passed before she realized it. She felt like a failure for making her parents sad. While others were enjoying their classes, why was she unable to do anything? She often blamed herself. However, her parents didn't blame her. You've done nothing wrong. You just overworked yourself and it's like your heart has caught a cold. Rest a bit and you'll be back to your old self. Don't rush, just focus on resting for now. Those words saved Olivia. She realized it wasn't because she was weak. Being told this allowed her to forgive herself. Returning to university was initially terrifying. She feared facing her own inadequacies and breaking again. But Olivia kept fighting. She managed to overcome her setbacks with sheer determination, gradually attending classes regularly, and eventually graduated. She chose a stable job, but time passed without feeling fulfilled. Around this time, we met again, but Olivia couldn't talk about her college struggles because of what she had said to me in high school. At first, she was nervous that I might ask, but when I didn't, she felt relieved and realized she loved that about me even more. We got married and then separated a year later. After we split, I spent years convincing myself that it was for the best and that I needed to work hard to catch up on what I had missed and get back on the elite track. I worried my parents would be disappointed, thinking I was supposed to be more capable. But then I found you on a job hunting website by chance. I almost spit out my coffee at her words. I remembered doing an interview for job seekers within the company a year ago. I thought it was a mistake at first. Reading about an executive flying around to overseas offices and research facilities while concurrently working as a senior manager. I knew you had gone abroad, but I didn't realize it was such a big deal. When we were married, you never talked much about your work. So I didn't know. The company had changed its name since then, so I didn't even think it was the same place you worked. Olivia smiled wryly as she sipped her coffee. I saw you steadily advancing in your career and wondered what I had been doing. What had I accomplished? I felt restless. I scratched my chin, unable to meet her eyes directly. When I glanced at her, I noticed that the uncertainty in her expression seemed to have softened a bit. I'm really glad I met you again. I wished I could have met you after I'd become more confident, though. Olivia lowered her gaze for a moment, then looked up with a resolute smile. I'm planning to take on a new challenge if I can achieve some success in the planning department. Will you support me then? Her confident tone made me nod without hesitation. Of course. I'll do everything I can to help. I wouldn't be where I am today without you, Olivia. And I wouldn't have recovered without you, Alex. There were so many times I almost gave up, but each time, I thought of you and pushed through. Wanting to be someone you wouldn't be ashamed of became my motivation. Almost instinctively, we both reached out. We shook hands firmly and finally exchanged words of reunion. It's good to see you again after so long. Yes, it's really good to see you too, Alex. After that, we never met alone again. I finally understood Olivia's past. Her troubled face when she was 23 and her refusal to quit her job or accept a long-distance marriage after we got married now made sense. Olivia was desperate. She wasn't just fighting as a wife but as an individual, striving to keep up with me and our peers. She was striving to be someone she could be proud of, someone she could think was doing her best. For her, that measure of effort was her job. Understanding this gave me a sense of clarity. At the same time, it felt like I had finally resolved the bitter separations we had at 18 and 23. 5 years later, Olivia became our company's first female overseas branch manager and went abroad. Despite being busy with business expansion, my days have been fulfilling. 3 years ago, I married Katie, whom I had been secretly dating since joining the company, and we had our first child a year ago. I was a bit late to become a father, but I'm giving my all. I participated in relay races and parent-child competitions at school events. Though nothing reignited between Olivia and me, we now motivate each other as old friends. Having experience in an overseas branch, I have online meetings with Olivia several times a month. Seeing her grow more confident and formidable inspires me and boosts my motivation. My wife supports and watches over this warmly. Running away and facing challenges without fear. Both are important and both are correct. Being honest with your feelings and facing them truthfully. Doing the best you can at that moment. That will surely guide your life in a good direction. If you're too hard on yourself, it's easy to break down. So, value yourself and those around you. I've learned that it's important to continue on your own path. Cherishing your heart and decide how to color your life. Sometimes I will make mistakes. But without fearing them, I will keep looking ahead and moving forward.